There's opportunity for every single kind of man during a downturn like this. If you live in the right place or if you seek out the right resources or the right people. Long gone are the days of getting a university degree and hoping to get a job where you don't have to work to make a lot of money. I think that was the dream. Soft middle management, fluffy jobs that actually don't mean anything. Men are going to be called to go back to manual labor, hard work. It's part of what I'm rediscovering here while living on the ranch, like, fixing the roof, I just spent a week adding solar panels and a battery backup system to my well pump, right? Like this is like man work. I think we're going to be called back to being able to do man work.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, guys, to another amazing and very, 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 very exciting episode of The Superhuman Life. As always, guys, I'm your host, Frank Rich. And first off, guys, let me just remind you how incredibly grateful and thankful I am to have you here with me today. I've been talking about this episode here for about the last month, maybe month and a half. Here we are, guys, episode 100. It's been a ride for the last 2 years and going on almost four months now. This podcast started back in July of 2019 because I had something on my heart that I wanted to share with the world, and I didn't know how it was going to be received. I didn't know, me opening up and talking about some of my struggles, things that I've had to go through, and ultimately where it's led me today. I didn't know how that was going to be received. But at the end of the day, guys, everything I'm doing in my life today started with one decision that I made, and then sharing that with the world. I mean, it's just opened up opportunities that I never thought would be presented to me, things that I never dreamt about or imagined. And I just want to thank each and every single one of you that are out there, whether this is the first time you're listening to The Superhuman Life or whether you've been here for 100 episodes. I want you to know how much it means to me, every single one of you out there. So, guys, we have what a conversation we have for you today. We have another returning guest. Most of you are going to be familiar with this man. You're going to be familiar with his work. Maybe you found us through him, because I've had a lot of people reach out and said that they're here following me. They're here consuming this work because of the initial conversation that Elliott and I had back on episode 23. So yes, today we have the return of the great Elliott Hulse. As you guys know, Elliott is a strong man. He's a father. He's a husband. He's a Christian. He's a leader to millions and father figure to millions of men around the world. Through his YouTube channel, Strength Camp and Yo Elliott's, this guy's been at it for a long time. I just talked about here, we're doing 100 episodes. We've been doing a video on YouTube every single day since July of last year. Elliott's been in the game for over a decade. This guy has amassed a social media following of over 2 million subscribers. His work has impacted, like I said, millions and millions of men. And I'm just so fortunate to know Elliott personally, to have had conversations with him, at lunch, behind closed doors. But I'm so grateful to be able to share two conversations with you. So we obviously had episode 23. So if you guys haven't done so yet, after listening to today's conversation, make sure to go check out the first episode where Elliott unpack porn. We talk about fasting, humility, in his relationship at the time. He was reconnecting his relationship with Christ. But today, guys, we get into just the world. Just, it's a different world we're living in. Elliott and I spoke beginning of 2020. It was February 2020. Here we are, early November of 2021. It's a completely different world we're living in. So we started off with just kind of getting an update on all things Elliott and the Hulse family. So we unpack, what led them to, leaving the St. Pete, Tampa Bay area, purchasing 40+ acre ranch out in the middle of Florida, what they're doing out there to kind of prepare for, what may be some difficult times that we're about to face. And then why have we gotten here? What's led us from a historical perspective to get to the point where we're seeing some of the things we're seeing here in the world. And then obviously, anybody that follows Elliott knows that he's big on marriage, bringing back conservative traditional values and in the role that men and women play. So we talk about the difference between courting and dating and what we as men can do. But more importantly than anything, guys, because our audience is for men, this conversation is about what do you need to do right now? How can you begin to get your own house in order? How can you begin to become the leader in your own life? How can you become the leader in your family life? Be the leader in your community, in times like right now. So what an incredible conversation. But before we get into that, guys, I remind you about our sponsor here. So as you guys know, we've been working with Covenant Eyes for a short while here, both at the Superhuman Life and our company Rebuilt Recovery. So today's sponsor is Covenant Eyes. Guys, we love Covenant Eyes. We recommend them all the time. We know they've been helping people overcome pornography for over 21 years now, guys. I've only been in this game for under 2 years. They've been doing this for over 2 decades with the world-class accountability software and insightful educational resources. Covenant Eyes understands that people find freedom through supportive and authentic relationships, just like this community that we're building here at the Superhuman Life. Now, Covenant Eyes have been around long enough to know that porn affects everyone, not just men. It affects everyone, men, women, children, everyone. If you're struggling for porn right now, guys, we have a message for you. You are not alone, and we are here to help. So Covenant Eyes has a special offer for every single one of the Superhuman Life podcast listeners. What we have today is we have a free 30-day trial of Covenant Eyes by using the code SUPERHUMAN, one word, SUPERHUMAN at checkout. All you need to do is down there in the description box or show notes, click that link or visit www.covenanteyes.com and enter the promo code SUPERHUMAN, one word, at checkout to get your first 30-day trial absolutely free. But guys, like I talk about all the time, this is a tool in your arsenal. If you're struggling with pornography, this is going to be something that's going to help add a layer of accountability. So in those moments, in those times of triggers, in those times of urges, you're forced to make a decision. So check them out, guys. Covenant Eyes, use code SUPERHUMAN. But let's get into today's conversation, guys. Leading and raising strong men in today's modern society with none other than the great Elliott Hulse. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you on the other side.
Elliott, my brother, welcome back for the second time to the Superhuman Life.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, really grateful for you and for the audience out there. This is our second attempt at getting around to conversations. So like I've been sharing with the audience here, coming up on 100 episodes, for me, it's something that I'm taking a little bit of pride in, the fact that we've been at this consistently for a little over 2 years. And, what we've really been focused on these last few episodes is bringing back some of our favorite guests from some of the earlier episodes. So, Elliott, you were with us back in, what would have been a different world. It was February 2020, prior to COVID, prior to shutdowns, prior to just kind of the world just kind of get flipped upside down on its head. So I think maybe a good place to start here today. I know you and the family have recently migrated to Central Florida, kind of leaving the city, and you bought a ranch out there. So yeah, we have a large audience that knows Elliott, follows Elliott. So we need to do a full intro to you, but maybe just kind of bring us up to speed on all things Elliott. What kind of preempted this move out of the city and into the ranch, and kind of have you and the family kind of navigated through COVID and yeah, how are things going with you and the family now?
Well, if one thing I think we can all agree on is that 2020 has been a huge mind shift for a lot of people. Regardless of your stance on the various new divisive issues that have arisen, we're at a place where I don't think anyone can be lukewarm anymore. I think it's a matter of taking your stance. There's no more gray area. You're either black or white. And given that, we knew that we needed to make some decisions about how we were going to continue to live our lives and raise our family, given the post-COVID world. And one thing that we've always valued, and that the time was just right for us, was to leave the cities, right? As things begin to degrade, and there's no question about it, they are, just look at the most recent challenge with regard to the supply chain, right? If the supply chain goes down, just for example, one of the many things we could discuss, it's good to be self-sufficient. It's good to have community that could pick up the slack where our interstate, international commerce is concerned, right? So moving out of the cities, of course, gets us away from the chaos associated with these various breakdowns, but also gave us the sovereignty to now own our own production sources, right? So moving out here has given us a chance to start homesteading. We lived in Pinellas County before, and I lived in a nice house in the suburbs, but I only had a little bit of land, if you could even call it that. It was just a front yard and a backyard, as well as being under the quote unquote restrictions that are associated with living in tight. I don't want to use the word tight knit because that assumes that you know and you love and you trust and you lean on the people around you, but just densely packed areas, right? Because even though we live in suburbs and we're very close to people, it seems that we're actually, in fact, very far away from them. Even, in attempts to try to bring communities together, if our values are not the same. So, moving out of the suburb gave us a chance to also be in a county and be in a community and be around like-minded people. That's another part of it, right? A lot of people are moving to the state of Florida in order to avoid the draconian lockdowns and tyranny that we're seeing happening in some of the major cities. But even within Florida itself, there's still division. There's still, particularly in the cities, there's this progressive sentiment, which actually confuses me, right? Because when I was younger, I would consider myself a liberal, especially in my 20s, right? And it came from my rebellious attitude, my revolutionary thinking. And back then, I would remember progressives and liberals being against the government. I remember, March Against Monsanto, and taking back power from the oligarchy and the fascist state, the corporations, and the government. And a strange thing happened, I guess, or was exposed with COVID, where people of that sentiment then all of a sudden became the greatest fascists known to our country, right? The whole trusting the pharmaceutical companies, right? If we're anti-establishment, but yet trusting everything that the media and the news and the government tells us and following suit and bowing down, cowing tow to their dictates and their mandates and what, there really is no progress. There's regression. There's slavery, right? We're going back to the days of indentured servitude, only that it's a medical martial law that we're under, and the tyranny of the Marxist takeover of our universities, our cities, so on and so forth. So moving out here gave me a chance to, we're going to be cattle ranching. Actually, in fact, I have a guy outside right now repairing some of my fences. We started homeschooling as well. I spent a lot of money on sending my kids to what I believe to be the best school that I can afford, but it was no different than the public schools in that once COVID hit, there was the fear that caused the school and the people to adopt this idea that masking our children and stopping them from going to phys ed and recess and social distancing them by having plastic between the desks, like that was something that I was against. I was like, there's no way. So homesteading now, homeschooling now, and living what was essentially a dream of mine, and that was to be a man living on the land. So this is where we find ourselves right now.
Yeah, no, I love all that. There's so much there we can get into, from the supply chain, which I do think, I do think I want to touch on that. What can men start kind of doing and preparing? Obviously not all of us, have the ability to maybe go out, buy acreage and whatnot. So maybe we can get into kind of some of the planning and what guys need to be focusing on right now. And then obviously I want to, touch on, the moral side, what's happening in the removal of God. One of the things that we touched on before we lost the last conversation that we had, but what has the move, done for you and the family, from a health perspective? I watch your videos. I mean, I don't consume every piece of Elliott content, but occasionally checking in, you show up on the YouTube feed, whatnot, and I can tell you, I've since seeing you in this. I mean, I can see it's a new environment from the old place that you were in when you were in St. Pete. I noticed a difference in just some of the glow about Elliott. I mean, you look healthier. Like, if you just want my honest opinion from watching videos. Is that due to being out there? Is that due to other things that you're doing? Like, what has the move done for you personally, health wise, and how has the family kind of transitioned? And yeah, what good has come out of getting out and not getting in the middle of nowhere, but being out there, living off the land and just eating more organic, whole food, and just not being tied up in the city.
Well, as you can imagine, there are less people, there's less traffic, there's less stress all around. We're not waking up at 6 a.m. to rush the kids out of the door. They kind of wake up whenever they want, and Colleen starts the homeschool training that she's doing right now at noon after she and I get our workout done. So one of the greatest things has been the recapturing of our time and our energy, right? Because we're not living by the world's clock any longer. I don't have a job where I have to punch a clock, but in a way, my wife and my children were being trained to, right? And I never imagined a life for either of them, my wife or my children, where we're living by the clock and by the school bell and by the rhythm of the world, the frequency of the world. And new agers like to talk about vibes and vibrations and frequencies, and it doesn't have to be so mystical. It could be literally, I'm not going to live by the rhythm of the world anymore because it's a frantic pace. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, take notice and follow the pace of nature. And he says that her virtue is patience. So everything's sort of slowed down quite a bit. And I know you kind of opened that question. It was a multifaceted question, it seems, with what could other people do? And if we're not in a situation where you're as blessed as I am, I take nothing for granted. I see the grace of God in all of the gifts in my life. One of the things we can do, I'm going to say this in a way that is relatable, but then bring it back home to where we are today. We've all studied what our ancestors experienced during the first Great Depression. And so some of our grandparents, I know Colleen's grandparents were here in the United States when they went through the Great Depression. And these are people who faced challenging times and as a result had to become very resourceful, right? This is the generation that didn't throw things away, they repaired them. And I'm convinced that we're approaching a time like that where everything was disposable. We threw away food, and the abundance was almost decadent. Dare I say, it was decadent. It's unrealistic. The way we live is completely unrealistic. It's a house of cards. It's a tenuous system that, as we know, is so fragile, could be dropped at any moment. We can simply look to what life was like and what people did to survive during the Great Depression. We could look at it in terms of prepping, right? So that's a term that you would use today, right? The media calls it hoarding, right? Because they don't want you to be empowered. Meanwhile, they're hoarding. The government is hoarding. They're buying up. They're shutting down certain corporations, food corporations, and such are being audited and shut down. But really, they're being taken over by the state so that they could produce mainly for the state. There's one company, I think they're called I can't remember, something farms. But recently they were approached by the government to stop all production as a means to revert or divert their production to help the government hoard more stuff. So that, there's that kind of that fascist approach where the government, fascism and government and communism today are actually bedmates. They may have you believe that they're somehow separate, but they're not. We're living in sort of a hybrid between fascism and communism, where which is even worse than one of them by themselves, two of them together, means that the government, not even the government, really our lords are not our government, lords of this world. The government are puppets These puppets, our governments are puppets to multinational conglomerate corporations. Those are our slave masters today. We could just see it with the pharmaceutical companies, right? There's no sense of sovereignty for the man, and there's no sense of sovereignty for the state. It's what do our corporate overlords want from us? And so I don't remember where I was going with that, but my intention here is a taking back of our sovereignty. And that may require challenge because we've been very accustomed to the ease of this supply chain and the convenience that we've been living under. But one of the things I think we're going to have to do, especially those of us in these freer states, is to get off the tit, is to get off the government and corporations' sustenance, and learn how to do it like our ancestors did. You got to can your own food. I think people should be stocking food. You should have stock. A lot of people only have like a day's worth of food or a week's worth of food. There's no reason why we couldn't do like our ancestors during the Great Depression and can our own foods, buy surplus and vacuum seal it and put them in buckets and learn how to produce your own. I'm learning how to use this method of farming. I guess you could call it farming, but it's called the Kratky method of producing plants hydroponically without electricity, right? Electricity is one of those things that we also take for granted, right? What happens when there's a power grid outage, which is on its way? These are things that they're predicting is going to happen, and maybe it's predictive programming because they want it to happen, but rolling blackouts have been tested in California. It was experienced last year in Texas and many of the Midwest states. If that's the case, we should be prepared with options. There are solar options. There are, one of the things we're having a shortage in also is propane. But if you can get propane and use a generator to have that as a backup, we need to build more redundancy, personal redundancy into the system. And that's what we're aiming to do here with our move to the homestead.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you said something there right at the beginning. You recognize that you have been blessed, but we know a lot of the same people. I know. I don't know all the details of what your business has done, but I know like you've had a successful online business. The YouTube channel has obviously reached millions of people. So you say you've been blessed, but I also know that you've put in years and years and years of work, intelligent work, and I also know you and Colleen. Something I heard you talk about in one of your recent videos, made some very challenging decisions early on in your relationship, in terms of how you guys were going to spend money, the role that she was going to play. If you can't talk to, the need for men to have their house in order financially, in a time like right now, because there's all these things that we can discuss, what is coming, months down the road, supply chain shutting down. But right now, there still is opportunity. There still is time for us to make some decisions. You can drive anywhere, and there's now hiring signs. So guys, and the reason why I'm asking this is, talk to a lot of guys, that need help. Reach out to me, Frank. I need help. Well, here's what it's like to get involved in a program, and for a guy not to have an extra 100, 200, 300 bucks a month to afford some help to develop himself through an investment. It's like, okay, like it should be a sign. Like if you're still living check to check and you don't know where next month rent is going to come from right now, like you got to start getting your house in order. So just talk to the need if you can, and what guys can do to help getting prepared financially and getting their house in order.
So I think one of the most interesting things about the Great Depression is that although it created tremendous poverty, it also created tons of opportunity. And I wouldn't know that if I didn't study the work of guys like Earl Nightingale, old timers. These are guys that were doing like personal development stuff back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. He used to have a radio show, and I remember listening to one of his programs. I think it was called Lead the Field, where he talked about a particular man during the Depression, and how he was able to pull himself up out of the gutter and become really, really resourceful and do really good things while the rest of the world was struggling. He tells the story. I can't remember the name of the guy, of a man who would think less in terms of what can I get. This was the attitude. What can I get from these companies because I'm starving, I'm hungry, I need something, and I need somebody to give me a job, to what can I provide? How can I go in and help my boss, help this CEO or this company owner? How can I go in there and make things amazing for that company? And because there's so many lazy people, slapdicks around, people who hate authority, they hate work. Our culture has become decadent. Nobody wants to do anything difficult. If you're that kind of guy, if you're the kind of guy that's willing to sacrifice and to work hard and to help other people get what they want, this is the time to pull that weapon out, because the competition is sleeping. The competition is at home receiving their stimulus check and watching Pornhub. And so there's far less competition, especially as it relates to what's on the horizon. We got to be able to be a few steps ahead of what we see in front of us. And our governor here in Florida is one of these guys who can see this way, and he thinks this way. And it's been amazing to hear how he has invested. First of all, Florida is doing great because we don't shut down. Our governor did not shut down. He's also opened the ports so that there's no supply. The supply issue is not going to be a Floridian problem, even though I'm in Florida and I'm doing this. But I understand the challenges around the world. One of the things he recently did was to invest in the production of more trade training, trade schools. There's going to be the need for more mechanics. There's going to be the need for more machine operators, people who can fix the machines, people who are good with their hands. These people are generally men. Construction, he's mapped out many new construction projects. The reason why I say that is because there's opportunity for every single kind of man during a downturn like this. If you live in the right place, or if you seek out the right resources or the right people. I think long gone are the days of getting a university degree and hoping to get a job where you don't have to work to make a lot of money. I think that was the dream. I think that's a feminist dream. I think it's a dream that has been piled on in order to usher women forward in the economy in a manner that's conducive to them, but also shuts men out, right? These, soft middle management, fluffy jobs that actually don't mean anything. Men are going to be called to go back to manual labor, hard work. It's part of what I'm rediscovering here while living on the ranch, like, fixing the roof, I just spent a week adding solar panels and a battery backup system to my well pump, right? Like this is like man work. I think we're going to be called back to being able to do man work. And I think there's even opportunity for the enterprising man who knows physical labor for creating businesses. I've been trying to get my pasture fences fixed for months. It's not even a lot of stuff, but the fencing companies don't have the amount of workers, and some of the companies are just not behaving in a competitive way during this time. Not that I would do it, but I just thought to myself, wow, there's ample opportunity for someone to start a fence company, like a fencing company, right? That I live where there's pastures. I think we got to think that way from this pipe dream of living a cushy, easy, middle management, middle of the road, college educated, fluffy, do nothing job.
Elliott, I want to ask you a personal question just to kind of follow that bit up there. So I've joked about this multiple times on the show here. Like the pictures sit behind me, they're sitting on the shelf because I don't even know how to hang a picture on a wall. So as we're having this conversation about men working with their hands and whatnot, what does a guy like me do? Like, I mean, do I need to take some classes going on YouTube? Am I kind of SOL? Like if shit kind of hits the fan, I mean, I know how to find the right people. I have means to hire people in need, but just kind of asking kind of a joking question here, because I've talked about it multiple times. So I know there's going to be an audience member or multiple people that are like, Elliott is talking exactly about Frank, like not knowing or being able to do anything with his hands. So yeah, what would you say to a guy like me, and don't hold anything back if you want.
Well, I have to admit that I'm not too different than you. I grew up with, most of my time in the computer and in reading books and creating media and lifting weights. So of course, I was able to maintain at least my testosterone level by doing physical work in the gym, but not really fixing, repairing, and building things. And so, moving here to the ranch, I was inspired, and I am inspired to learn these things, to look like, how animal husbandry, right? I'm going to have cattle here, and I'm going to have to learn how to breed these cattle and to help, help the animals, right? And things of that nature. So the great thing, the big difference, right? Well, one big difference between us and our grandparents were a lot of these things was common knowledge. Fixing things, repairing things, building things was common knowledge to them. And the reason why it was because their dads taught them and their grandfathers taught them, right? It was like, oh, this is what men have been doing for past 4 generations. Post the 1970s, we all turned soft paw and have become really effeminate and basically useless in our ability to do anything, around the house, right? And of course, if you have the resources to pay someone, please do. I do that all the time. But we have YouTube. We have books. I don't know anything about homesteading. You know what I did? I went and bought all 6 of Joel Salatin's books on homesteading: how to raise chickens, how to raise cows, how to raise a family on a homestead, how to build homesteading structures on my land. And then I bought a course and I'm watching videos and I'm taking notes. So for example, the project for putting the solar panels and battery backup system on my phone, I know nothing about that. It's not something that came naturally to me, but I paid a company that teaches you how to do that, right? So not only did I buy the materials for them, but they have YouTube videos and a manual. And so I spent my days watching the YouTube videos, reading the manual, going out there experimenting. At first I didn't do it right and there was a problem. Had to go back to the drawing board. I had to call the company. I had to say, hey, where did I mess up? And they said, okay, this is where you went wrong. I went back and I did it again. We just got to learn. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we should feel guilty for it not being second nature to us because we're born in a world where that's not required, but the future will require that we do know how to do these things, right? Because if the economy tanks, if the dollar crashes, if the supply lines are cut, and people are out of work or there's no work, there are no workers to hire, we're going to be shit out of luck. And I'm experiencing it day in and day out when there are projects that I'd rather pay someone to do that I can't find anybody. And I'm like, okay, well, back to YouTube. And then I just have to carve out some time and do it myself. So if you want to know how to put those pictures on the wall, you just figure it out. It's not up on your wall because you don't want it to be up on your wall. But if you really want it on your wall, you know exactly what to do, right? You got to get a stud finder. You know what a stud finder is? Get a stud finder, right? It's just this little thing you pay like $15 for, and it beeps when there's this is like technology that makes it so much easier. I remember my dad having to knock on the wall, like to figure out where the stud is. And then it's very simple, use your drill. You should have a drill, right? You should have a screwdriver. You put a screw in the hole and you hang your thing. But I know you can figure that out if you want to. And I think all of us have that capacity, even in realms where we're not experts. YouTube is amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's where people find me, and our entire business has been built, off of YouTube videos now. And I'm so glad we even went there because, just speaking to the guys out there that are hearing this is actually something for those of you that are struggling to maybe break through, speaking specifically to a large amount of men that are listening to this, that are still struggling with porn, knowing how the brain works, like learning a new skill is going to activate and trigger neural pathways, neural connections, and help reboot and rewire. So what Elliott is saying here, like learning to do something with your hands is actually, like we talk about this in our program, like go learn something new. It's not always manual. It's like learn something new about yourself, learn a new exercise, learn how to start a business, learn how to write sales copy or whatever. But the same can apply to physical stuff. And yeah, I could put them up if I wanted to. It's just once I place them there, it's serving the purpose now. It literally doesn't. I don't think about it other than the times that I turn the video on and I'm looking back at myself with them. But yeah, I think that there's a lot there to to learning, the resistance part of things, of the challenge has been proven. Even if it's a mental challenge to elevate testosterone. So as we're speaking to men here, that's something that all of us could benefit from. I want to shift the conversation to talk about relationships and sex, and obviously, we'll probably touch on porn and maybe get into the gender stuff as well. I saw another recent video that you shared, and I know you have a talk coming up, I believe, the 21 convention, where you're going to be diving deeper into this. But you're talking about the difference and it's something you're very passionate about, between courting and dating. Kind of break that down a little bit, give your perspective on it, and what is the difference between courting and dating, and how can men fall into trouble pursuing one versus the other?
Well, first, I think it's interesting if we explore the term courting and where it comes from and how it became obsolete in our postmodern world. The word courting means that you were in a court. And so for the most part, the idea was that when a young man and a young woman were considering each other for marriage, the parents were involved. Now, parents were no longer involved in who we decide to go be promiscuous with. And, mothers and fathers have no idea what their daughters and sons are doing out there. But there was a time when the family had a vested interest in who the son or daughter were planning to become intimate with and marry. That was the whole idea. Was, okay, these young people are getting together. It's not for entertainment. It's not for fun. It's not to play marriage and to, what people like to do is say, live together and try it out that way. We know statistically that families or couples that live together before marriage tend to not have successful marriages. There's a good reason why tradition had us withhold sex until marriage, and living together was taboo. So it was around the same time that this idea of courting was the standard. And so the court would be, just for example, like a king's court, right? Like the house, that would mean that you're near a house or in a house, maybe the front yard, the backyard, but you're where the family was, right? So if I was courting a girl, I would go to her house. Not like today, and we got so many different innovations today that has destroyed this. But just so you have an idea of the history, was if I wanted to court a young lady, I would go to her house. I would meet her parents. I would ask for permission to speak with and share my intentions for that girl. And the father, when the fathers were present, would and this was important, would give his blessing or not, right? Especially to the young lady, like, hey, I don't think this is a good guy for you. And this was when children respected their parents. So given that the parents have more life experience, have had successful relationships, hopefully, right? Would like to see relationships and marriages and families work again. The children would trust in their parents' judgment. And so more than anything, it boiled down to a vetting process. It was a process to see whether or not this person was worthy of my marriage, especially for a man. Is this woman worthy of my ring? Is she worthy of my name? Is she worthy of my seed, right? And for the young lady, in concert with her parents, to see if this is a worthwhile man. Can you provide for my daughter? Can you take care of my daughter? Will you lead my daughter right? Will you do the right thing for her? Are you just here for superficial reasons? Or are you here for deeper reasons? It was when we took relationships more seriously and we had an intention behind the so-called dating, which wasn't what it is today, which is how quickly can I get into bed with you? How quickly can I become emotionally entangled with you? And in essence, these things defile a future marriage bed. We do know statistically that the more men a woman has sex with, the more mental problems she has. It disturbs them on a very deep level. Women who've had multiple sexual partners tend to have a lower capacity for long-term relationship. They're generally the women that are having divorces or initiating divorces. Men, on the other hand, are a little bit different. We're not so affected emotionally and mentally and within our soul and our spirit. But promiscuity is very different for men today than maybe it was in the past, because we have grown so much more effeminate You know, the gender roles have swapped, and men think and behave a lot like the way women used to. And so what ends up happening, I see more than anything, and I'm sure you can relate with regard to the men that you mentor to, that it's the men that are being heartbroken these days. It's the men that are all broken up about the women. It's not the women that are complaining. Women can spread their legs very easily and get whatever they want, essentially, right? Except a relationship. They can have sex, but relationships are in our hands. We're the ones that decide if we want to have a relationship or not. But the men are becoming, you know, for sake of using a popular colloquial term, simps, where we become sex addicted, putting the pussy on the pedestal, not being able to see a woman for what she is, including the red flags, because of sex goggles. And that's what fornication and promiscuity is doing. I know you guys in your program, you talk a lot about pornography and masturbation, right? What else are you watching porn for, right? Pornography and masturbation. Those are two things. That's something that is just as or more deleterious to a future marriage bed than a woman's promiscuity. Because when our wiring becomes entrenched in fantasy sex through a screen, that puts sex goggles on, or puts perverted goggles on our eyes, and it makes it very difficult for us to relate to, deal with, and have strong relations with a real life flesh and bone woman. So we have to go back to chastity of our eyes, of our ears, of our culture, of our ways. And so that's the call to action that I'm bringing forth, is if we're going to make marriage great again, we have to make the way we relate to one another as men and women great again. And the way we make ourselves prepared for a relationship with men and women is by understanding the differences between a man and woman, cultivating polarity between a man and woman, and allowing the tension to, because polarity creates tension, sexual tension, allowing the tension to sit and to simmer rather than having to squash it right away. There's a woman that has this book called Cupid's Broken Arrow. She talks about Carezza sex. And her issue, she wrote this book because she was failing in relationships with men. And she discovered her husband was a neurobiologist. She ended up marrying a neuroscientist who did a TED talk on how porn rewires and destroys the brain. Her husband did that. And so she learned a lot from her husband, and she discovered that part of the reason why her relationships weren't working, but a lot of relationships aren't working, it's because of orgasms. It's because of having sex and blowing your load and reaching for and hankering for sexual delight instead of true stoic relational polarity and love.
Yeah, I know you've spoken with Rob Kowalski. We had Rob back on the show not too long ago, and he wrote the book Why Waiting Works. He shares in the book some of the science behind these chemicals that are produced at the time of orgasm. So there's certain chemicals in the female body that creates kind of a bonding need, and then in the male it's not so much the bonding, but you kind of begin to take on that protector role. And that's where I think once you have sex, you talked about if you slept with a woman and then the relationship breaks, it's not the woman that is emotionally impacted, it's the guys, because like something that he was kind of supposed to be protecting over has now been taken. You said I probably experienced it in the men that I coach. I've experienced that in my own life. I obviously talk openly about my own struggles, and I'm not the same man that I was 2 years ago, let alone 5-10 years ago. Multiple women that I lived with and thought that they were the one. I mean, I thank God now that we didn't fully go, because I'd had multiple divorces by now. But I've experienced all this exact same thing. It's like that goggles just kind of make you feel the love when really all that's there is the lust. So talk about where a guy should be before thinking about marriage. Like, we said, make marriage great again. I think if you tell a guy, out there, like you don't have sex before marriage, you don't casually date, court, like the guy's going to see like, okay, well, I need to go find my wife like ASAP, woman's going to complete me, all these kind of false beliefs. So where should a guy be at in life before even contemplating going out there and looking for a wife?
Well, I have to admit once again that I'm fortunate in that I got married very early. I married my high school girlfriend. We had great chemistry, strong polarity. I knew I wanted to make babies with her, and she wanted to be with me forever. And so we were kids, and as a result of our innocence, I guess you could say, our pair bond was very strong. That's what happens when you save yourself for the first person, right? She and I skipped the whole promiscuous party age thing, or we're going out and partying and having a whole lot of sex. We came together and we bonded early, and there was never this sense. And this is a new age sort of a postmodern sense that relationships are disposable and I need to keep trying and looking for something else. The world, there's so many options that it's confusing. And so I don't expect anybody, let alone everybody, to have that same kind of experience that I had. But if I had to go back and do it all over again, given what I do know now and, what I've seen happen and work and not work in the relationships of the men that I deal with, the very first thing a man should really be doing, really so important, is to forget women altogether. And what I mean by that is you got to work on yourself. Listen, women are valued for what they are, right? A woman doesn't have to do very much at all. In fact, she could be 200 pounds and most guys will still pound her, right? She can get pretty much whatever she wants because women are. They simply are, right? They smell good. They look good. They put on a little bit of makeup and perfume, and all of a sudden, men are head over heels, right? It's very easy for them to attract us. It's not the same way with men, with men and women. In fact, it's even more difficult for a man because women have higher standards that include not just what a man can, how he looks, how he carries himself, his attitude, right? The superficial stuff, but also what can he provide? How is he both a alpha protector, right? Women like bigger men, taller men, stronger men, right? Alpha male men who have an overt, extroverted, aggressive attitude, right? Regardless of what feminists have told us, the fact is that that's how polarity happens, right? My wife is soft, small, and yielding. I'm big, strong, and aggressive. And so that makes for a lot of fun between the two of us, a lot of polarity between the two of us. There's that there, but also, and that's really like the sexual polarity. But also, as a woman who wants to have children, there needs to be the provision aspect. And as a man, we have to show ourselves capable, able, and willing to support a woman's space, right? What do I mean by that? Make money. One of the things, and here's the crazy thing, women can make money today too. Women make more money than men, generally speaking, these days as well, right? If you take out the top 1% of men that make all the money that none of us will get anyway, and they try to lump that in with all men, that doesn't exist. When you just go straight down the line with equal education between men and women are beating us. Women are beating us, so they don't need us. You can continue to do that, women, right? Or you could let the career go, drop the masculine reaching into the world and settle into your femininity and allow a man to step up and do that for you, right? So one of the ways that I speak to the men in my program with regard to how to rekindle or repolarize a relationship is she's got to come home. She's got to come home. She's going to come home and make babies and raise the family and make the home, right? If we don't know our roles and don't play our parts and we're competing with each other, or we think that all things are equal when they're not, there's going to be no polarity in the relationship. There's going to be no polarity in the relationship. These women are out there saying that they want a man, and they do want a man. It's just natural for a woman that a man that's better than them. They want a man that's better than them, man that makes more money than them, a man that can take care of them. It's just normal. It's just natural. It's just the way it is. So when we're young and we're full of vigor and vitality and opportunity, That's when we need to be building our careers, building our businesses, building our life. Buy a house, build your own frame, right? That's number one. Frame out your whole life first. Build your whole life first without needing a woman, without needing orgasm, without the addiction to sex, right? Build all that up first, and then you're in a place where you can invite a woman in. I think that's the most resourceful stance for a man this day. Build yourself up. You don't need a woman. You don't, especially in your building stages. You don't need a woman. You need to build yourself up. And then once you've built everything you have, and you've got a frame that you can bring a woman into, right? You can invite her in and say, hey, baby, you'll never have to work a day in your life. But here's what I'm looking for in a wife. And I think there are certain elements that we need to be honest with ourselves and honest with women about in terms of what we want in a wife. And I'm going to use this one word that's a very triggering word, but it's what maintains polarity in a relationship on a woman's end that is very taboo. But men in the heart of hearts would acknowledge that, yeah, I would prefer that. And women in their hearts of hearts, if they yielded to this role, are so much happier, so much less stressed out, would probably have more orgasms themselves because they're not so clinched up. And that is submission, right? If you're dating a woman, right, and you're courting her, right, not in this old-fashioned way like I was talking, but in terms of I'm vetting you for marriage. That's my opinion. Is if we're getting together, we're thinking marriage and family. That I don't see otherwise get a fuck buddy, right? And that's fine too. Sterile transient sex, or even homosexual sex. That's what guys do. They check out, they can't deal with women, so they bone each other. Very different when we're getting together with a woman and we're thinking generativity, we're thinking children, we're thinking family, we're thinking legacy. We got to ask certain questions, and one that I would absolutely 100% pose to a woman that you're considering is, what do you think about a wife's submission to her husband's authority? If you can't answer that question, or if you ask that question and you get vitriol, you get hate, you get washed by the gynocentric world, and it's going to be very difficult to have polarity at first, right? Because the second to be there, because once she realizes, oh man, this guy is weak and unworthy of following, and you start feeling like, why won't my wife listen to me? Why won't my wife trust me? Why won't my wife follow my lead? It's because you never had these kinds of conversations. You have to have the conversation about polarity, and polarity has equal but opposite parts, and they're both very valuable. In the same way that it is advantageous to the relationship for a woman to yield to her husband's authority and to be a submissive wife, is to the same degree that a man has to know how to carry the responsibility of the relationship, carry the responsibility of the family, and stand in that place of authority rather than shirking our authority, which is what most men do. We defer to our wives to do the leading in many instances. So both genders have to re-traditionalize our understanding of these roles so that we can go into these relationships with the polarity that's required for long-term, healthy, happy marriages.
Yeah, brother, I'm 100% agreeing there on all that relationship side of things. I think there's obviously we can jump right to Genesis to kind of get the example of how a man should look at his relationship, how he should get his house in order. I think just looking at how Adam and Eve were created. Adam created, or God created Adam. He gave him a job, named the animals, and then he gave him a purpose. And his purpose was to tend and protect, serve and protect the garden. And it wasn't until Adam, had accomplished his task, his job, all the animals had a name, and then he was walking in his purpose. And then God said, man is not good by himself. Let me bring him a helpmate. And the way I kind of heard you break all that down is, a guy should get his house in order, set up his framework for the man that he's going to be, for the life that he wants to live. And then once that is in place, it's now invite. You used a very particular word. You said invite the woman into it. Is this something that you're interested in playing a role in? And I think that is the way that it's supposed to be. Now, obviously, I'm sitting here as a man that didn't live his life that way. And, you know, I know one thing with you as well, there's been different versions of Elliott throughout the years. I even think somebody made a documentary about a year ago on the different faces of Elliott Hulse. How have you navigated, you know, growth, maybe feedback, comments from people? Oh, I don't like Elliott. And where I'm going is obviously the things that you believe in and some of your views now are not the same that they were maybe 2 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and then even 10 years. How have you navigated, you know, through growing, through seeing things differently and pushback that you get from people, whether they're in your family or not? I don't know if it's happened to you, but I get people in my family. It's like, I don't like, it's not that they don't like me, but they're like, you're always changing, Frank. Like, why can't you stay the same? And it's like, we're not supposed to stay the same. So how have you navigated through that? And just kind of what's your, you know, take on that and maybe a piece of advice to the men out there that are just in the early stages of their personal growth, because it's something that I think we're all going to face. If we're truly committed on growth, if we're truly committed on becoming a better version, like we're going to get some pushback from people, not that they're trying to hold us back, but they don't want to change themselves. So if I can hold on to somebody, keep them back, then I don't have to change. Yeah. So I know there's a lot that I just said there. Feel free to take it anywhere you want to, though.
It's funny. I was listening to a YouTube video yesterday of a woman who had a dream about coming tribulations, coming challenges. And she was a Christian woman, and she was privy to, as many are, you know, the idea in Revelation that there's going to be a time when there's a separation between the wheat and the chaff. There's going to be a great harvesting, and that there's also going to be, as a result, or what's going to create that, is a great persecution that is inevitable. History shows us it's cyclical. It's happened. It always happens, and it's coming. It's coming again. And in it, she said that it wasn't the Christians that were persecuted per se. She says it was the resistors. It was the resistors. And so she said that there were certain Christians that went the way of the world, and they weren't the ones that faced persecution. It was those that were willing to stand up in the face of popular opinion and the mass psychosis and said no, that were the ones that were being persecuted. And I think, with given what you said there, when the world is against you, you have to have conviction. You have to have very strong conviction. I couldn't stand up and handle the eggs and the tomatoes thrown at me if I didn't have a sense of, well, I'm right, you know. And, you know, even having the opposite feedback, I get a lot of I get tons of great feedback from men and women. Colleen and I spoke at an event this weekend, 22 convention, where there were women there that were like, "You're right. We need to remove this thorn of feminism from the side of our culture and go back to tradition." So you've got both. Now, when I first came across the red pill, right? That's where I all of a sudden woke up to intersexual dynamics and how the world has become gynocentric, our culture. And then I started to learn about the subversion, the ideological subversion by the Marxist takeover in the West. I really started going deep. All those things led me back to the Bible. And so although I was speaking political jargon, psychological jargon, philosophical jargon, it was all merely ideas, until all those ideas pointed me back to its source. And when I discovered the source of these ideas, which seemed new for me at the time because I wasn't a Christian, were found in the Bible, I said, no wonder why Christians are willing to die for their convictions. This is the right way. The Bible lays out the way for us to live our lives. It tells the human story. It tells us what's best for us, as well as what we're going to resist and where we're going to make those mistakes. And it happens time and time again. Feminism is not new. Just look at Jezebel and Ahab. I mean, we've been doing this even in the garden, right? Like, Adam was effeminate. God asked him to protect his wife, and he didn't do it. He ended up, I want to be with my wife. He was putting the pussy on the pedestal, and Eve was subverted, which usually it comes through the woman. That's why feminism is so important to the Marxist takeover. And then he simped. he bowed down, and that's how we fell. We fell because Adam was a simp and Eve was a feminist, right? That was the first expression of that. So what is the Bible telling us with these thousands of year old story? Be careful, men. Be careful, women. This is your nature. Now, as much as you might think that you're special, high and mighty, can overcome it or overdo it, do it your own, God's law is nature's law. God is not going to give us anything that's against our nature. He will ask us to be stronger than our nature, to overcome our nature, but everything that he asks us to do and the plan that he unfolds and the patriarchy that made the West successful is all based on natural law. So for me to be able to withstand the vitriol and the hate and whatever it is, that you were alluding to, is only possible because the things I'm speaking about are founded in truth. I'm not making stuff up. I'm not trying to be trendy. I don't have a newfangled, brand new technology that's going to teach you how to be progressive. No, I'm pointing to what has always been, what has been before we got here, when we'll be gone, and is scriptural, is handed down to us by prophets and angels and manifestation of God through Jesus Christ. So that's why I can be firm in my position, because I know that God likes what I'm saying.
No, I love that. Absolutely love that. And that's why I was so excited to have you back on here. Not somebody that I don't know if I told you this last time. I wasn't like an early, follower of your, information. I think actually one of the first times I stumbled across you was when I met you at Dave Sharp's event back in 2017. I don't know if you remember that. We had lunch right there in the lobby. That was kind of that, the beginning of this, online-ish marketing, journey that I've been on. And, obviously we've taken a couple pivots there, but, what I love and respect so much of what you do is what you just shared there. I know I mentioned this to you, the last recording that got lost, which almost happened again here today. But, Adams said it, John Adams, I believe it was him when the founding fathers were finding our country, and there's some debate, Jefferson, was he a believer? He wrote a version of the Bible, I believe, without any God in it. But they were all founded on, in the country was founded on these Judeo-Christian principles. And, I think it was Adams that said, the U.S. Constitution was written for a moral and religious people. And as we just continue to see, some of the things we've touched on here and a lot of the, the conversation that you had with your men is this, it's the deteriorating of the society, the breaking down of the West, using verbiage that I hear you share quite regularly. And I think it just comes down to what you just said there. We have to have an ultimate source of truth. We have to have something that we all point our eyes to. Humans have a religious instinct, and if you don't honor and worship a God, there's going to be something that replaces that. Whatever you place at the highest value becomes your God, and unfortunately now it's becoming more and more government is sitting in that position for most, and then if it's not the government, it's themselves. So yeah, just really appreciate you and grateful for all the work that you do. Obviously, in these 4 years of knowing you, it's had an impact on me. I'm grateful for our relationship here, and really appreciate you coming back on here today. So obviously people are going to be somewhat familiar with you, but just share with the audience, if they want to go deeper on some of the things that you have, and anything up and coming. And then, if I mentioned your Kings as well, I know you have an amazing group that you work with. So yeah, people want to go deeper. They want to connect with you after today. Where's the best places to get more of Elliott?
YouTube, right? I've got a lot of videos on YouTube, still making videos on YouTube, conversations very similar to what we're having right now. If you find one of my videos, you watch it to the end and I make an offer, consider it, right? So I have a coaching program where I'm working with men, making them strong again, becoming kings in our lives in fitness, business, and women. And if that sounds like you or something you'd be interested in joining a like-minded group of men to be about, then, join me on that. No pressure, but this is where we're going. And it's up to us as men. And if we don't step up and change our ways and recognize the authority that God has given us to have responsibility over this world and to put women in their place, then it's not going to get any better.
Yeah, that's great. And anything, in addition to obviously, you with what we talked about at the beginning with the family and the ranch, anything exciting in 2022 or with the coaching, or I don't know if you still play an active role in strength camp, but yeah, just anything, up and coming exciting that you're, excited to share with people?
Well, this weekend, Colleen and I spoke at an event, and we did it for the first time. I had my wife on stage. We made videos together. It's not something that we've done in the past decade and a half that I've been making videos. But as our life has unfolded and we were aware of our blessings, we recognize the importance of what we have to offer. And so she and I have been planning since yesterday and today. I'm speaking with my team about putting together a marriage workshop, a place where men and women can come together and we can speak on these issues as they relate to your current relationships. If you're planning on getting married, if you are married and it doesn't seem to be working out, I think that she and I have a lot to offer in that regard. So I've been speaking to men my whole life. And it almost seems to some people that I'm against women, but that's not the case at all. In fact, by bringing my wife in to show you, no, this is how it works. And here's proof. And, as Derek Prince once said, if you want to know if a man's a good man, look at his wife. And you're just going to look at my wife's and look at her life. And that, look, I'm not saying this stuff to be mean. I'm saying it because it works. It works in our life. And if you're not sure how to go about it, look, we can guide you. My wife can be an example and speak to the women, and I can do the same as I have done with men. So we want to come together in a workshop and do something meaningful in that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. And anything I can, do to support you and get the word out there for that. I think it's, I think having Colleen in your life, I know she sat behind the scenes in a lot of what you're doing. But I think getting her out there to share the female perspective, both for the men to hear that, but then also for the females to hear that side as well. I think that is going to be just something. I mean, it's going to take your work and your message and your reach to a whole nother level. So really excited to see you guys put that together. And that relationship dynamic is something we're looking at, doing a lot more of here with Rebuilt Recovery, my coaching business, and it's obviously something that whether it's a marriage or a serious relationship or a guy is struggling single, like he's gonna have to navigate relationships at some point in this new walk in new life. So there may be episode 3 here coming down the road. With a joint Colleen and Elliott sometime in the future. So Elliott, I appreciate you so much. I know we jumped through a lot to make today happen. So I'm incredibly grateful for you. We have one question we end every single episode with. I don't know if you remember the last time we had, obviously I asked you the question. So I'm curious how different or how similar today's answer is. But, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life. And the start of this and the genesis has been, my own story, my own transformation, my own walk through life. But when I talk about living a superhuman life, Elliott, for me, it's really a belief system. It's a way that I try to show up every day in the world and live out my life. And it's the belief or the understanding that I do believe we were all put on this earth for a purpose. I think each one of us has a calling on our life, whether that's strong man, strength coach, entrepreneur, YouTuber, podcaster. I really see myself as a coach to men and young boys because I do some Little League coaching as well. But so there's a purpose for each one of us. And some of the guys may be, blue collar purpose, maybe handyman purpose. And that's okay. We've talked a lot about how to find your purpose here on the show. So that's one part of it is we're all created with a calling on our life. But then we're supposed to do the work here. And this is through the physical development of our bodies. This is through the development of our minds. This is through, becoming the strongest version, stealing words from you, or becoming the man that we were created to be, using the language that we use here. So that's what I believe living a superhuman life is, when you understand what that purpose is, and then you're attacking it every single day with 100% effort. But I like to get the guest take here. So Elliott, as we bring it home here with the return of the Elliots, how would you define for a second time living a superhuman life.
Everything, I agree with everything that you said there. I'm totally on board with that. And regardless of what I said last time, I'm sure I was right when I said that. I'm going to be right when I say this one too. You know, I was famous for the phrase, be the strongest version of yourself, right? That was my whole hook. Be the strongest you, be the best you in all aspects of your life. Give your best, do 100%. Don't be lazy, be great, right? And that's a lot of what I hear you saying as well in your own words. There's also a bit more to it, right? So there's me, there's we, and then there's all. And so we work into a framework. We belong in. We have a context of our lives. We're not we're not just by ourselves, right? Being the strongest me, but for what? Right. And so I would just bring in the concept of we, meaning men and women are better together, right? If I'm building myself as a man, I would love to have my polar opposite in a female woman, right? Be a masculine man and know how to invite a feminine woman into your life and how to create a family with that woman. And then also community. I think it's, as I'm growing in age and wisdom, I'm realizing just how important it is to cultivate or to emanate that love from the family out into the community. And I think a part of the reason why we're so lost as a nation right now and so divided is because men in particular have shirked our responsibility for stepping up and filling the roles that are required for the running of a county, a state, and a country. And so Colleen and I have been thinking a lot more, and I've been putting pedal to metal in order to get active in the community. And I was really inspired yesterday by a news headline I saw about fathers in Louisiana who had, there's been a lot of turmoil within the public schools, and it's usually a lot of moms that are going and they're voicing their opinion about what's going on in the schools, what they're teaching in the schools. But it wasn't until the fathers showed up. They were having some violence at the school. Things just weren't going really well. The fathers showed up and the fathers took a stand. And instantly, when the fathers got involved, everything started to fall in place. Fathers, I know we're working. I know we're working on ourselves. I know we've got our families, but I think America, I think our counties, our cities, our states are going to require for us to step up and play more of an active role in what's going on in the world around us. Otherwise, it's going to continue to close in on us. And at some point, there's going to be the point of no return. And I think we're almost there. So we got to turn it around, fellas.
Yeah, it's so well said, and I'm glad you added in that fathering piece. I had Ryan Mickler, older man, on few months back, and I think the father part it goes beyond the men that are fathers that have kids. Like, fathering is something that each one of us can do. Whether or not you have kids that are yours, you can play the role of being a father type figure. Elliott, you've been a father figure to millions of men. I mentioned here, I coach my nephew's Little League team. I have a team of 10 to 12-year-olds that I get to spend a couple hours with. And truthfully, it's probably the most meaningful 3-4 hours that I do every single week. In addition to all the business coaching, all the other coaching, all of that stuff, because I'm able to create real impact in these young boys' lives. They haven't been, they don't have been, glossed over by the world and penetrated was not the right word. But I think you know what I mean. Like, they haven't been taken over completely. Like they're and I do it because I love sports. I love being active, but I understand that we're raising up the next generation. And if we don't start planting those seeds with the younger generation at that age, it may be too late. So, Elliott, I appreciate you so much. Thank you once again. And guys, we need strong men. We need strong leaders. We need strong father figures out there in the world. So hopefully today's conversation brought some insight to you, shifted a new perspective out there. But now it's time to go take action. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. But get out there, start being a figure, start getting your house in order, start prepping, because times are changing, and all we can focus on is what is ours. So we love you guys. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating, connect with Elliott, and we'll see you next week. God bless you guys.